When your whole life was built to break you, how do you turn that into a weapon? Two warriors, one named Maki, both shaped by systems that tried to erase them. Now they fight, not just to win, but to prove they shouldn't have been overlooked. One was raised to cut down her bloodline, the other molded to control chaos with fire. So what happens when Zen rage meets O's precision? When cursed energy that rejects sorcery collides with pyrokinetic mastery that bends it midair? Who breaks first? The one who cuts through everything, or the one who never lets anything land? We'll break down their powers, pain points, and the turning point that flips this match in a heartbeat. Because only one Maki leaves with the name, the win, and the proof they were always more than what they were born into. We'll map abilities, the weaknesses each can exploit, and the exact moment the tide turns. Stakes are clear. Company 8 pride, the Zenin legacy, and the real Maki crown. And yes, if someone shouts, Maki, move, both move. Clean comms only. So, between brute resolve and surgical fire control, whose discipline cracks first? We pivot straight into the core contest of temperament and technique. Resolve versus fire control.
Twin hover units Techio at the ready. Move out!
We start with what defines them under pressure. O's runs on drill-hardened routine. Second-gen ignition on command. Named fire constructs deployed with purpose, acting like chess pieces that screen and bait. She reps baton and shield and lives in squad comms, so her tempo stays steady even when the room spikes to chaos. Zenin is the opposite rhythm. She's a close quarter specialist who trims movement to pure function, reads beats, then lands at the hinge moment with a cursed tool parry or a timing-based counter. Minimal steps, maximum payoff. Both were shaped by institutions that tried to box them in. O's pushed through skepticism to earn her frontline role and guard her team with clean, disciplined flame control. Zenin grew inside a clan that undervalued her. She answered with work, ethic, and conditioning so intense it rewrote her future. Different roads, same goal, respect on their terms. And that's where the cracks hide. O's precision can desync if emotions spike. Zenin's grit can tunnel into an overcommit, especially against layered setups. Let's map gear to liabilities. O's can float mid-air flames to fake lanes, create heat screens, and force bad reads. She can launch from odd angles with quick, tight gestures, cutting her tail. Her baton drills give her clinch options when space collapses, and her shield work buys seconds for ignition. Zenin carries cursed tools like extensions of intent, chaining throws and locks that punish any reach. She uses low profiles and simple cover to break lines of sight and angles her entries to erase setup time. Here's the analogy that matters. O's plays zone defense with heat, while Zenin is the on-ball stopper who rips the play at half court. Zone can frustrate. On-ball can flip a game with one read. When durability and relentless pressure meet precise heat management, raw toughness doesn't solve timing traps. O's targets rhythm and footing, not just surface temperature. Zenin can tank incidental heat better than most, but she still has to solve the board. We close one gap now. Whose internal resolve is steadier at baseline? O's, her composure keeps a stable pulse under chaos, but Zenin's surge mentality spikes higher in clutch windows, and those spikes decide fights. If the baseline edge leans to O's, the next layer is about creating the window. Can Zenin craft the exact beat that flips the table before the screens and feints finish cooking, or does O's tighten control and squeeze out the read? Hold that thought. The adjustments and the routes to a finish are next. Paths to victory, traps, counters, and trump cards start with one micro adjustment each. For O's, it's tighter ignition windows and cleaner micro gestures to deny the read. For Zenin, it's the half-step delay on her entry to land offbeat. Outside the arming window of timing traps. Whoever flips that timing first steals tempo. When conditions are clear. O's wants layered zones and baited counters. She builds choke points of heat, staggers delayed ignitions, and throws visual distortion from thermal shimmer over real lanes. Her name fireballs, Mera Mera, and Pusu Pusu can orbit as sentries, hemming footwork and punishing the greedy sidestep. Zenin wants compression. She forces short range, hunts the grip fight, and either disarms with a cursed tool redirection or shuts ignition gestures with grapples and joint control. One turns the map into a maze, the other folds the map and tackles the cartographer. Tension sits in the opening. O's heat screens mask angles and fake doors, so a clean lane might be a trap. Zenon's step-ins can erase setup time and flip a feint into a takedown before a delayed ignition matures. If O's paints too carefully, she cedes initiative. If Zenon rushes the read, she eats a seeded blast. O's plan is mean in detail. She plants heat at doorways, stacks delayed pops to herd movement, and uses baton feints to tax Zenon's guard while her orbiting fire restricts lanes. Thermal Shimmer nudges entries a few inches wrong, which is all the punishment needs. Meramara and Pusupusu rotate at offset tempos, clipping exit routes and forcing a low stance that slows the burst. Zenon's plan is equally sharp. She pre-reads cadence, baits a commit, slips inside with a cursed tool parry, then chains throws into locks that cage wrists and elbows. Her goal is to freeze Oz's ignition language. If the hands can't talk, the flames don't speak. Counters exist. O's trains subtle micro-gestures and off-angle launches, so telegraph stays minimal even in a scramble. She can throw from unconventional lines to keep pressure live while retreating or sidestepping. Zenon drills against wild techniques, uses cover to split sightlines, and runs a low profile to hide in dead zones between sentries. Two Makis enter, one Maki leaves, then both show up at roll call because the memo was vague and HR hates us. Trump cards matter. Oz's overclock is a high heat focused burst that can briefly reshape terrain, open a lane, or hard close one. Zenon's hidden ace is a precise weapon swap to a specialized cursed tool designed to pin or sever options even through heat shimmer. We close a gap here. Cursed energy soaks incidental heat, but O's targets timing and position, not just durability. With roots drawn and aces live, the next exchange determines who actually gets to spring theirs. Final verdict, Zenon surges first. Yuki versus Leona. One fighter wins by sabotaging fire at the molecular level without landing a traditional hit. The other treats heat like instinct and turns every inch of damage into data. Virtual mass versus mana sensitivity. What happens when Yuki's mass ignores heat itself? Can Leona's combat instinct predict a force that's technically virtual? Which queen's secret backstory holds the mental edge? And how do you win a duel before your opponent realizes they've been hit? Leona kidnaps squads for training vacations in volcanoes. Yuki asks your type before she crushes your vectors. Stakes, the special grade legacy, Crimson Lion pride, and whether raw aggression ever beats high-level sabotage. Which queen's signature strength hides the crack that decides the match? So let's lay out profiles, pressure, and openings, because identity sets the pace of this fight. On paper, it's a clash of pure identities. Yuki bends the battlefield with virtual mass, pressure shifts, vector flips, air that gets heavy or vanishes in a blink. She calls the core application Star Rage, and with Garuda as a Shikigami, she adds a secondary mass vector that can shove, shear, or anchor from off-angle. Leona lives in the blaze. Mana Zone wrapped tight, speed at close range, pressure that never lets you breathe, and the skill to strike from every angle at once. Backstory sharpens those edges. Yuki once stood on the path to be a star plasma vessel, saw the cost of that fate, and chose to break the cycle of cursed energy instead of serving it. That gives her patience and purpose. Observe, design, dismantle. Leona rejected the royal capital, took the wilderness, and forged herself into the uncrowned, undefeated lioness. That's pride as practice. She hunts the strongest read, then commits with unmatched resolve. The question is how Yuki's pressure math treats a high-temperature, high-oxygen style that wants to devour the arena. Fire needs airflow and steady circulation, and pressure changes bully bolt. Raise density, and you steer a plume. Create a near vacuum, and you starve it. Star Rage turns physics into a game plan, and the arena into her ally. Close the first gap. Yuki's virtual mass ignores the conceptual logic of fire. It doesn't fight flame, it rewrites the medium fire needs. So combustion parameters stop applying in pockets she defines. Flames don't negotiate with a missing atmosphere. But can Leona's speed outpace gravity itself when the vectors shift mid-step? Yuki plays tactician. She studies rhythm before she spins force, stacking layered setups instead of throwing early Hail Marys. That matters because Garuda can apply pressure from a second axis, letting her bend a rush path while she locks the exit with a vacuum. It's clean and plays straight into her patient reads. The weakness is technical. This control is focus intensive, maintaining gradients, aligning vectors, and syncing Garuda's push-pull stack's cognitive load. Mira Leona brings apex predator energy. Leadership sharpened her instincts to cut through noise and chase the real threat, so she forces exchanges to smoke out feints. That aggression floods the zone with tempo and heat, which can break slower planners. Her flaw is technical too. Pure aggression can create tunnel vision. A strategist can bait that lunge and rotate the field under her. Here's the analogy that matters. One of them treats the whole field like a lung. Either you feed it, oxygen in, flames roar, or you choke it. No air, fire, coughs out. Yuki can sculpt dense pockets around lanes Mira Leona wants to use, bending flame vectors off angle and making rush paths feel like wading through syrup. Meanwhile, Monozone lets Mira Leona feel for those pockets and strike from odd angles to test the seams. So where's the opening? Yuki wants a slow squeeze, pressure rails, faint lanes, and a delayed snap when the lioness bites. Mira Leona wants short, violent checks that pry at those rails before they harden. From here, we can track whose plan converts first and what kind of terrain Reed flips momentum when the pace spikes. Which brings us to the core, win conditions and trump cards. The cleanest route for Yuki is control, not clash. Funnel Mira Leona into dense pockets, bend trajectories so the flames skid, then carve micro vacuums that desync her combustion rhythm. She wants control lanes and force it angles, less brawl, more throttle. When air grows heavy, fire loses finesse. When a plume gets yanked sideways, footwork slips. That's how you turn raw heat into wasted motion. Mira Leona's counterpunches, straight through the theory. Use speed feints and a tight monozone to feel for pressure seams. Probe, pivot, repeat. When she senses the softest vector, she spikes temperature and crashes that lane before Yuki firms it up. High heat makes gases swell, so a quick thermal surge can puff a pocket into instability. If Yuki overextends control, the pocket ripples and the lioness sprints through the wrinkle. You see it in the baited lane tactic. Yuki leaves a false low-density path, invites a rush, then slams virtual mass sideways as Mira Leona commits. Balance slips, a knee buckles. The follow-up compression tags her stance and steals tempo. But that game isn't one way. Mira Leona can cycle short, savage bursts instead of long flames. She reduces oxygen windows, keeps heat local, and denies Yuki the long choke. Less fuel needed per burst means more dashes per minute. Kalados Brachium adds a real wrench. That focused, explosive strike can dump heat and expansion right where Yuki thickens the air, using thermal swelling to rattle a density pocket and disrupt a localized gravity shift. It's a pry bar for seams. And if the Crimson Lion squad is watching, they're absolutely placing bets on whether she just punches the gravity into submission. Focus cost becomes the hidden stat. Yuki tracks multiple gradients at once. Each scramble taxes her concentration. Mira Leona's stamina thrives in those repeats, stacking micro resets until tiny slips appear. One overcorrect, one late vector flip, and the door opens. It all points to a battle where the smarter engine must last longer than the louder one. Trump card, decide the coin flip. Yuki's emergency singular pressure lock is the hard clamp, a single point freeze at leverage. In lore terms, her absolute desperation looks like a localized black hole, a crushing one-shot anchor that trades map control for finality. If she fires early, she loses the board. If she waits, she risks getting pinned before it lines up. Mira Leona's ceiling is Hellfire incarnate, becoming mana itself, pushing output and sense through the blaze. A Pharaoh overdrive that treats heat like armor and telemetry. It hits fast, it drains fast. Kalados Brachium chains into it for brutal entries, but fine control slips as power spikes. Mental Edge closes the loop. The all-time Volcano Mountain Trail sharpened her instincts to chase the real threat in hostile terrain. But that hunt can still bite. Misread a fading pocket as failure instead of bait. And Yuki's last trap snaps. The lane collapses, the ledger flips. From here, everything tees up a live test. Does a near finish become the setup for the decisive catch, or the crack that lets the lioness rally? We shift straight into the duel. Heat, pressure, and a faint misread. Mira Leona opens with control. Relentless fire claws and tight arcs. Monozone tuned to the smallest ripple. She crowds space on purpose. Glancing burns skate across Yuki's guard and calves. Nothing lethal, everything data. Yuki eats the scratches while she calibrates virtual mass output. How dense, how fast, how wide without tripping her own timing. Yuki answers by locking the floor. Pressure climbs. The air grows heavy enough that flame plumes kink sideways on launch. She adds Garuda to the mix, off-angle force as a secondary mass vector to hem movement and shave off exit speed. Mereoleona lunges through a lane and Yuki flips vector mid-step, shoving her into a dense pocket that grips stance and oxygen at once. The slam lands, heat sputters. The arena hears that dull crack of compression and thinks, that's the one, it isn't over. Mereoleona rides the hurt with heat cycling, coughing microbursts that vent the pocket like valves along a pipe. Each burst eats a sliver of air and carves just enough space to keep her from folding. She plants, shoulders square, eyes tracking the rails. Unmatched resolve, doesn't panic, it hunts. She accelerates through the weight with sheer force of will, shocking the room. Point blank blaze through a tightening vice. For a breath, it looks like she wins on a raw entry. Then the rally inside the rally. A faint dip of her hip sells a weak flank. Yuki keys on it and shifts the gradient a hair early. Mereoleona watches the hand tell, threads a blazing jab through the thinnest lane, and clips Yuki's chin with a flash-cook shock. It's not a knockout, it's a reset. The lioness takes center, and the heat surges, short and mean, denying long chokes and forcing scrambles. Instinct is perfect at reading real drag, real heat, real flow. But here's the catch we flagged. Instinct can't predict parameters it can't feel. Virtual mass isn't heat or wind. It's a bias on motion that doesn't announce itself to flame sense. Mereoleona reads the world as it is. Yuki edits the parts a sensor can't touch. Decision fatigue starts to tax the control board. Yuki is juggling pockets, lanes, and footwork in split seconds. One late correction, one half beat where a pressure seam doesn't stitch fast enough. Mereoleona feels that seam through her fire and crashes it with a hook and knee combo that pins Yuki to the edge of her own rails. Focus costs pile up. Cornered, Yuki levels her hands like she'll flatten the field with a single ugly clamp. It reads like surrender. The crowd hears last stand. Mereoleona smiles and armors up for the bulldoze. Except the counter isn't loud, it's silent. No flare, no quake, just air that stops agreeing with fire. The move looks like giving up, but the lanes are narrowing, molecule by molecule, toward a very specific win condition. Final verdict, the stance was bait. Yuki primed a micro-pressure lattice and used gravitational density to drain oxygen from the pocket where Mereoleona committed. The finishing rush hit dead air, flames snuffed mid-swing. Momentum died on contact, and Yuki took control. Execution over raw blast. Technical sabotage, beating spiritual power. That closes the gaps. Virtual mass ignored heat. Instinct couldn't read a virtual force. The mental edge came from lives lived in hostile systems. But the smarter trap won the sprint. The winner is Yuki. Debated below. If your attack has to touch the soul, but your opponent can shift the entire spirit world around you, who actually has the advantage? That's the puzzle with Nobara versus Momo. Yes, a hypothetical crossover. Jujutsu Kaisen's precision sorcerer versus Dandadan's yokai wrangler. Here's what makes this matchup brutal. One needs proximity, the other erases it. So what breaks first? Your nerve, your aim, or the ground beneath your feet? We're breaking down their specialties. Soul-level precision versus occult battlefield control. And yes, those are real to their source material. And if you think staying out of range keeps you safe, you haven't seen what Momo does with range. Let's see what actually lands first. We're weighing a locked-in, soul-level strike against wide area, spiritual interference. And the timing decides everything. Nobara's kit is built for exactness. Straw doll technique with resonance, nails, hammer. She isn't breaking guard. She's bypassing them. She establishes a physical link through hair, blood, or a shared fragment like fabric fibers. Once the tether is real, she pours cursed energy through the doll, and the target eats the harm at their core, not surface, core. That's why her damage scales so hard when she confirms. It's surgical, and proven in her series, Momo doesn't trade tools one-to-one. In Dandadan, she's a psychic with second sight who can perceive, engage with, and leverage spirits and yokai phenomena. She's not summoning an army on command, but in haunted active spaces, she reads the room, places focus, and uses talismans or spiritual intuition to steer the flow. That turns the arena into a moving problem set. Lanes get noisy, angles get contested. It's not pure command over yokai. It's applied awareness and interference that creates battlefield clutter. So what blocks what? Nobara's locksmith approach needs a clean credential. Hair, blood, a snag of cloth. She'll fire nails at angles to create shrapnel, bait scrambles, and harvest any fragment that proves contact. With resonance, one valid tether means walls don't save you. That tracks directly to canon. The doll stands in the cursed energy channels. The target suffers in parallel. But battlefield interference jams confirmation. Momo can salt the approach with talismans, throw off lines of sight, and stack enough spiritual noise that Nobara has to double-check whether a fragment actually belongs to her true target. That costs nails, tempo, and windows. It's less about hard nullification and more about forcing Nobara to spend reps verifying before she commits to resonance. Mindset matters. Nobara thrives in pressure and retaliatory beats. She'll accept trades, stay inside chaos, and convert one mistake into a kill line. She's reactive, opportunistic, and confident in tight quarters. Momo is proactive. She plans around larger forces than herself, sets up, and guides momentum. She's a strategist who keeps the macro advantage by keeping the field living and adaptive. Those attitudes drive decision-making. One hunts for a single opening, the other prevents that opening from existing. Which lands first comes down to access versus denial. If Nobara tags a valid piece, the damage doesn't care about cover. If Momo layers the field with decoys, barriers, and spirit activity, Nobara's read gets delayed and her windows shrink. That's a tempo fight. Both have limited bandwidth. Nobara's reloads and repositioning tax her cadence. Momo's layering and maintenance tax her focus and stamina. Here's the fair correction on mechanics. Nobara's resonance is explicit. A tether makes the doll you. That's canon. Momo's ecosystem is situational. She doesn't puppeteer yokai like soldiers, but she can cooperate with friendly entities, ward against hostile ones, and use talismans or spiritual anchors to shore up space. That still yields control, just with nuance, fewer hard commands, more smart pressure, and protective framing. In practice, Nobara will probe angled nails, ricochets, trap placements that convert missed hits into fragments. She'll try to avoid needless rushes by letting debris work as collectors. Momo will contest every channel. She'll crowd lanes with spirit interference, place wards on likely approach vectors, and use decoy anchors that waste Nobara's checks. Every false positive buys Momo time to rotate her setup. Think of it as hacking versus network architecture. Nobara wants one clean exploit, the tether that routes straight to the core. Momo wants redundancies, decoys, and static so the packet never authenticates. If Nobara stays patient and keeps her aim disciplined, she finds a credential. If Momo keeps the system adaptive, the credential expires before resonance fires. Psychology decides who blinks. Nobara's comfort with knife-edge trades means she won't panic when the room tightens. She'll trade for information and hold her nerve. Momo's comfort with orchestration means she'll keep rebalancing the field and refuse to give a stable angle. Match flow is the resource. Each second of clean setup for Momo is a second Nobara must turn into a tether. Each nail Nobara spins for intel is a cue for Momo to refresh wards and shuffle anchors. So what actually lands first? The moment one breaks the other's setup loop. A clean fragment in Nobara's hand turns a straw doll into a mirror and ignored bodies. A kept, layered field on Momo's side starves the tether and drains Nobara's clock. With that dynamic clear, we can now define the win paths and the exact counters that cut them off. Breaking the other's core plan starts with a simple metric: completion under fire. Not who moves faster, but who locks their condition while the other is still building. If Nobara needs a tether and Momo needs the field, who finishes first? Execution speed is the stat. Nobara doesn't need 10 steps, she needs one valid fragment. Momo doesn't need raw hit. She needs a stable ecosystem that keeps those fragments from ever being clean. That's the heartbeat of this matchup. Nobara's win path is brutal in its simplicity. She forces a tag with shrapnel, hair, or any shared medium she can scrape off you, then fires resonance straight into the target where armor can't reach. She thrives in exchanges where a single nail turns into a core jab. The pressure multiplies with each confirmation. One tag becomes two. Two becomes a burst of follow-ups. In canon, this scaling is situational, not infinite. Resonance hits hard once a link is secured, and repeated tethers let her stack damage. But it's not a screen-wide nuke. It's precise, repeatable, and punishing when she reads the moment right. Momo's response is to drown that single pathway in noise. She leverages yokai activity and spiritual presence to collapse angles, uses decoys to create false anchors, and lets ambient static scramble Nobara's read on what is actually connected. With second sight and practical charm use, she can lay wards, nudge entities, and keep the flow unpredictable. Talismans and simple barriers can misdirect attention and line of sight, forcing Nobara to doubt a line that looks valid. Doubt is a delay. A delay is lost tempo. Momo's own wind path plays the long game, pin Nobara's movement with layered interference, bait hammer windups so the commitment windows stretch, then punish during reload frames or when Nobara needs a lane to triangulate. If Momo desyncs Nobara's rhythm, the nails start to feel heavy, and every swing risks a counter. She doesn't need to crush, she needs to constrict. This matches what we see. Momo performs best when she keeps the environment active and herself mobile, directing attention and pressure rather than brute forcing a finish. Nobara counters by refusing to ask for permission. Indirect hits are her cheat code. She uses detonations to scatter fragments, ricochets to tag blind corners, and trap placements to seed future angles. She can farm a tether without charging straight in. That's key. If she treats the field like a minefield that feeds her instead of scares her, Momo's swarm becomes a resource. All of that lines up with her cannon creativity, angled shots, delayed pops, and turning debris into a conduit. So we attack weaknesses. Nobara's range is modest and her setup takes intent. She can't spam forever. Nails are finite, timing matters, and reloads are real. Momo relies on external activity and situational support. If the field gets chaotic in a way she didn't plan, her guidance loops strain, and keeping attention distributed takes effort. Break order, and her influence dips. Their trump cards matter, but stay grounded. Nobara doesn't go apocalyptic. She escalates by securing stronger, cleaner links. Once a firm tether is in hand, resonance can hit decisively and bypass conventional defense, letting her chain pressure faster. Momo's surge play isn't summoning on command so much as rallying what's present, reinforcing wards, coordinating with a stronger entity if available, or focusing her intent to harden a zone. It's about tightening coverage and spiking denial, not instant domination. Here's where the snowball lives. The first clean setup tilts everything. If Nobara lands an early tether, every follow-up becomes faster and meaner within her technique's limits. If Momo cements layers first, every Nobara action becomes attacks. Break rhythm once, and you start paying interest. That's why the opening minute is lethal, without a single knockout blow. We'll close a gap the community asks about. Can Nobara touch Momo through spirit shields? Yes, if she secures a valid tether. Layers, stall her reads, and soak line of sight. But soul targeting via straw doll doesn't care about bodyguards once the link is real. The problem isn't the shield, it's finding the stitch it can't cover. On the flip side, can Momo's allies hard counter explosive cursed techniques? They can smother lines and soak angles, but they don't invalidate a confirmed proxy. So who sets up faster when both are under fire? If Momo wins the first rotation and keeps entities rotating like a conveyor belt, she steals Nobara's time and sells it back at a markup. If Nobara forces even one verified fragment through the static, she compresses the fight to a point where Momo's wide net can't catch the needle. It only takes one nail to flip tempo. Now we take that theory to the ground. Who gains the first decisive foothold when precision meets swarm tactics? We open on motion. Setup wars, momentum swings, and the near win locks into the sequence of set, test, and deny. Each side trying to complete their core condition while bleeding the other's clock. Momo spreads awareness, not literal commands. She reads the hotspots, posts simple wards, and positions cooperative spirits to watch arcs and pressure likely lanes. The space gets busy. Sightlines shorten, approach vectors get tagged, and sudden spikes of activity cue where not to step. Nobara stays calm. Light hammer taps mark rhythm. One forward probe, one lateral ricochet, then a low strike to sample ground clutter. She's mapping noise density and logging where the gaps repeat. It's measured. It's her speed. The first reversal is small by design. Nobara plants a trap nail along a choke, ankle height, low profile. A nearby spirit intercepts and kills the pop. Good read by Momo's side, but the broken shaft kicks a tiny shard into a wall, and it snags a thread of fabric lint drifting from earlier movement. That's a plausible link source for Straw Doll, a physical fragment that belongs to the target. It's faint, but it meets the technique's logic. Nobara's focus hardens. A weak link still carries a pulse if she confirms it. Momo doesn't tunnel. She rotates attention, moves the true pressure diagonal with a subtle relocation, and burns a couple talismans to steady that lane. It's not folding the map. It's a smart reposition and a refresh of anchors to keep the field alive. Nobara sells a commit into the soft center, lets a scout bite on the tail, then drives a nail into a rear wall. Angle set. The earlier shard gives her a second point. It's depth over width, and she wants that triangulation for a safe confirm. Tempo chess kicks in. Momo wins wide. More lanes, more checks, more time tax. Nobara wins deep. Fewer actions, higher value per confirm. Each second Momo maintains layers, the map gets teeth. Each second Nobara narrows a thread. A nerve ending cuts out. Beast trade in single-digit counts. No wasted steps. Both steal time. Momo calls for pressure, not a finisher. A tougher, cooperative spirit leans in, and the atmosphere clamps. It's suppression. Pin her stance, tax her timing, make the next hammer fractionally late. Nobara accepts a glancing hit to steal spacing data, then pings cursed energy along the lint thread she's verified. Straw doll, resonance, the straw proxy takes the nail. The effect rides the link. The pulse staggers Momo. It's not decisive, but it's clean. Nearby spirits wobble a half step. Momo reacts by cutting commitments that just got risky, burning a ward, reassigning a watch angle, and shifting her own position to shake the tenuous link. That breaks Nobara's read mid-breath, and the counter comes fast. Two spirits cross-cut her angles, while a third bodies a nail out of the air. That punish window is legit, and Momo presses it. Now the screws turn. Lanes get pinned like traffic cones. Nails are finite. Reload matters. Nobara kites without conceding, dragging Momo into a rhythm the conductor prefers. Predictable beats, predictable checks. The setup window shrinks to seconds. One overreach means a grab. One mistimed swing means losing a tool. A quick note on mechanics mid-flow. Allies can smother lines and eat angles. They do not invalidate a confirmed proxy. That's why that earlier stagger got through. Bodyguards stop bodies, resonance keys to a link. Our near win tilts toward Momo on paper. Field control is hers. Pressure is hers. The punish is one beat from closing if Nobara fires into a fake line or wastes a hammer for nothing. The swarm looks ready to cash the check. Nobara buys one beat back with a feint. She shows a draw from the pouch, obvious enough for a watcher to lunge, while her real intent is the old shard, wedged in mortar, still holding residue she can redress. A short tap, not a full swing, reawakens the established path right as Momo rotates her last secure anchor to cover that diagonal. It's a timing cut, not power. The room barely changes. Momo feels it. One more layer of deception is on the table, and the next exchange decides whether space wins or the core does. In this hypothetical crossover, the deciding factor is link integrity versus layered defense. When Nobara secures a legitimate tether, Straw Doll with resonance routes damage to the spiritual core and bypasses external bodyguards. That interaction is consistent with her canon mechanics and a plausible read on how Momo's spirit-backed shielding would behave. So the winner is Nobara Kugisaki. One verified fragment, one clean resonance. That's the ultimate expression of power under pressure. Momo's orchestration shows unmatched resolve and nearly steals tempo, but precision with a valid proxy closes. Your turn. Could Momo Surge deny every credential? Drop your take. Subscribe for more crossover analysis.